In this video, I'll explain input validation in Lambda functions and we'll give a demo of that using Lambda Powertools for Java. So when we work in Lambda, we just extract the output from the payload and perform the necessary operation. But sometimes the provided payload is not in its best shape. So we should always try to validate the input, which helps in preventing unnecessary error handling scenarios. Let me just show you what exactly we are going to do with payload validation. So let's say this is my hello world Lambda and I have this handle request method. And you can see this is accepting string as an input. If my Lambda input is application load balancer request event, so in that case, how do I make sure if my request which is coming, particularly the body part, is correct or not? Because if I open this request event, you can see these things which you get as input to Lambda, but we are more concerned about the body. Another example could be like your Lambda is getting invoked from API gateway. And if I go inside this request event, you can see there are many things that we get as part of our input request, but we are more concerned about the body part. So this video is about validating the request input that you are getting, be it from the AWS events or be it your custom event also. When I say custom event, so let's say that your Lambda is getting employee object as an input, and you have to validate if the details of the employee which you are getting as an input to your Lambda, if they are correct or not. So this is what I mean by payload validation. So why validate payload? So validating Lambda payload is a good practice because when you validate the request payload, you can verify if the sent input request is valid or not. And for security reasons, you should also sanitize the request. Somebody might be sending some script inside your request payload. So you have to take care of that also. You can avoid unnecessary errors in the business logic. For example, let's say in one of the Lambda, you are sending email to the user, and what if the email passed is not correct? Then you can return correct response codes such as client validation HTTP response code, which is let's say 400 response code in case there is a bad input to our Lambda, rather than sending internal server error or HTTP code 500 every time. Also, when validating Lambda payload at the very beginning, you can avoid unnecessary billing which you incur if the error occurs in the business logic. So this is also one of the reasons to validate the payload at the very start of your handle request method. What validations you generally perform? So it could be required fields, then it could be set of values. Like if you have an address, you can have two values only, like office address or home address. Then you can validate email address, credit cards, and many more such fields as per your business logic. Now, how to do Lambda request validation? So you can perform request validation by yourself using javax.validation API or Json validators, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So there's an open source project known as Lambda Powertools for Java. This takes care of common utilities for your Lambda functions such as logging, request validation, tracing. By using this, you just have to include one annotation and you're all set to go. I'll show you that in the demo. Powertools validation is rich in features. So you can validate both request and response with this. So whatever response that you are sending back from your Lambda, is that a valid response? Because client might be expecting that kind of response only. Also, the validation is supported for different AWS events. For example, if you look at event bridge JSON or application load balancer JSON, so they would be different, but the main part is the body, which is actually getting checked for our business logic. This library automatically takes care of that. For validating every input, Powertools needs to have the schema which is checked against every request. So now this is our hello world Lambda class, and let's say we are doing request validation for our custom object which is employee. So let me just create a new class, Pojo class, with name as employee. So I'll just create a new package here, and inside this package I'll create this class. It'll be a Pojo class, so I can use 3 fields here. So this is my Pojo class employee with the 3 fields, emp ID, name and email ID. So I would be performing validation for this class. So if I go back to my hello world Lambda, so I'll just import this class. I'll just return all okay. And now we have to perform request validation on this employee object, and for that we need to add a POM dependency for Powertools. For this I'll just go to my POM and I've already copied the Powertools dependency. I'll just paste it here. So this is my Powertools dependency and this is the official library from Amazon. To work with this you need one plugin also, AspectJ plugin. I'll just copy here. So don't worry, I'll provide the GitHub link for this code. You can check these details from my GitHub profile. To perform the validation, what you need to do here is you have to just add a new annotation which says validation. So now we have to provide more details on this validation. So let's say we want to validate our employee object, but we have to provide the schema against which our employee would be tested. So in this you have something called inbound schema, so which means every inbound request would be checked against the employee object, and if the schema is not matching then the request will be failed. You would be getting request validation exception. And now what should be the schema? This schema is actually nothing but a JSON schema. Let me show you that from the JSON schema website. So if you go to this jasonschema.org, you can get to know about creating JSON schema for your Java objects. So you can see this is the example schema file. Herein you need to provide the ID of the schema, title of the schema, description, and then the properties. Here properties means the fields inside your object. For our employee object, the schema would be like this. We have, let's say, emp ID as 10, name as Ajay, and email ID as abc at 123. Our schema would be like this. You can see we have employee object, and inside that we have the properties. This emp ID, name and email should match exactly with your Java variable names. You can also add the validation such as if you need a minimum number or maximum number, and let's say if you have some string, let's say for email ID we need to have some validation on email regex. So this description here is the error message that would be displayed on screen if validation fails. So let me just copy paste this schema in my resources, and then we can perform the validation. So this is my schema here. You can see we are all set on this, and if I go to my Lambda function, so in inbound schema I can just mention. So this is it guys, this is the only line of code that you need to specify. Every request which would be coming to your Lambda function would be checked against this schema. Now we are all set on this. We need to just deploy this Lambda function. And if you're not familiar with CDK, if you don't want to learn CDK, you can just build this functions module and just deploy this jar. But I would be deploying my Lambda function using CDK. So what I'll do is I'll just go to my terminal and I'll just call mvn clean package. So this would have created a new function.jar here, and if I go to my infra module and I'll call cdk deploy, this will deploy my Lambda function to my AWS environment. So I'll go to Lambda and directly test this Lambda against a valid JSON. So you can see that this is all okay because we have given the correct input request. So in our schema JSON, we have given employee ID from 1 to 100. So let's say I pass 105 here. So let's just check what happens. So I'll click test again. So you can see that there are validations error. So messages employee must have a maximum value of 100 here. And to cross check, we can just go to our schema JSON. You can see that this is minimum 1 and maximum 100. And let's just now try the wrong email ID because we have already given a regex here. I'll go to console again. I'll give the correct emp ID, but I will remove the @ from email ID. So this will fail now. And let's just go and test this. Yeah, you can see this is a failure. Why? Validation error. Pattern is not matching. So yeah guys, this is the validation which you should be performing, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. One thing I wanted to cover here is it's not recommended to use validation because you can see that you don't have any control on what exception is thrown here. So this is throwing validation exception with power tools. Ideally what you should be using in your project is there's a class here, validations util. Inside the same library you should call validate here, and in validate you can just pass the object and then the same thing as the inbound schema. So I'll just comment this out, and what I can do here is I can just call try and catch here. I can catch the validation exception here. As a return type, what I can do is I can call all not okay, and in real life scenarios in your projects you should always be returning a HTTP status code. So you can return 400 here. I'm returning all not okay, and then I can append this with exception dot get message. So this is my change. This is the way to do the validation. What I can do is I can just go to my function and build this so that I have the latest jar file which I can deploy. Now I can go to infra and call cdk deploy. So it's deployed. I'll go to my console here. I'll just refresh this Lambda, and I'll just pass on the invalid JSON with invalid email ID. I'll click on test here. Yeah, as you can see that all not okay, and then I'm appending the error message from exception. Yeah, I mean this is the way you should be doing the request validation for your Lambda. I think this is not a good message. We should say that input not valid, and we can also extract what exactly is the problematic thing, and we can just tell the client that you have to provide the correct field for the employee. So this is it guys. I'll share the code link with you in the form of GitHub link, so you can go and refer that. So stay tuned for more videos on Lambda with Java. Thanks for watching. Bye.